that Peter was on his way back, the Neverland had again woke into life. We ought to use the pluperfect and say wakened, but woke is better, and was always used by Peter. In his absence, things are usually quiet on the island. The fairies take an hour longer in the morning, the beasts attend to their young, the redskins feed heavily for 6 days and nights, and when pirates and lost boys meet, they merely bite their thumbs at each other. But with the coming of Peter, who hates lethargy, they are all underway again. If you put your ear to the ground now, you would hear the whole island seething with life. On this evening, the chief forces of the island were disposed as follows. The lost boys were out looking for Peter. The pirates were out looking for the lost boys. The redskins were out looking for the pirates. And the beasts were out looking for the redskins. They were all going round and round the island, but they did not meet because they were all going at the same rate. All wanted blood except the boys, who liked it as a rule, but tonight they were out to greet their captain. The boys on the island vary, of course, in numbers, according as they get killed and so on. And when they seem to be growing up, which is against the rules, Peter thinned them out. But at this time, there were 6 of them, counting the twins as 2. Let us pretend to lie here among the sugar cane and watch them as they steal by in single file, each with his hand on his dagger. They are forbidden by Peter to look in the least like him, and they wear the skins of bears slain by themselves, in which they are so round and furry that when they fall, they roll. They have therefore become very sure-footed. The first to pass is Toodles, not the least brave, but the most unfortunate of all that gallant band. He had been in fewer adventures than any of them because the big things constantly happened just when he had stepped round the corner. All would be quiet. He would take the opportunity of going off to gather a few sticks for firewood, and then, when he returned, the others would be sweeping up the blood. This ill luck had given a gentle melancholy to his countenance, but instead of souring his nature, had sweetened it, so that he was quite the humblest of boys. Poor kind Toodles, there is danger in the air for you tonight. Take care lest an adventure is now offered to you, which, if accepted, will plunge you in deepest woe. Toodles, the fairy Tink, who is bent on mischief this night, is looking for a tool, and she thinks you the most easily tricked of the boys. 'Ware, Tinker Bell. Would that he could hear us, but we are not really on this island, and he passes by, biting his knuckles. Next comes Nibs, the gay and debonair, followed by Slightly, who cuts whistles out of trees and dances ecstatically to his own tunes. Slightly is the most conceited of the boys. He thinks he remembers the days before he was lost, with their manners and customs, and this has given his nose an offensive tilt. Curly is 4th. He is a pickle, and so often he has had to deliver up his person when Peter said sternly, "Stand forth, the one who did this thing." And now, at the command, he stands forth automatically, whether he has done it or no. Last comes the twins, who cannot be described, because we should be sure to describe the wrong one. Peter never quite knew what twins were, and his band were not allowed to know anything he did not know. So these two were always vague about themselves, and did their best to give satisfaction by keeping close together in an apologetic sort of way. The boys vanish in the gloom, and after a pause, but not a long pause, for things go briskly on the island, come the pirates on their track. We hear them before they are seen, and it is always the same dreadful song.
Avast belay, your ho heave to, a pirating we go, and if we're parted by a shot, we're sure to meet below.
A more villainous-looking lot never hung in a row on execution dock. Here, a little in advance, ever and again with his head to the ground listening, his great arms bare, pieces of 8 in his ears as ornaments, is the handsome Italian Cecco, who cut his names in letters of blood on the back of the governor of the prison at Gaol. That gigantic black behind him has had many names since he dropped the one with which dusky mothers still terrify their children on the banks of the Guadalmo. Here is Bill Jukes, every inch of him tattooed, the same Bill Jukes who got 6 dozen on the walrus from Flint before he would drop the bag of Madores, and Cookson, said to be Black Murphy's brother, but this was never proved, and Gentleman Starkey, once an usher in public schools and still dainty in his ways of killing, and Skylights, Morgan's Skylights, and the Irish boatswain Smee, an oddly genteel man who stabbed, so to speak, without offence, and was the only nonconformist in Hook's crew, and Noodler, whose hands were fixed on backwards, and Robert Mullins, and Alf Mason, and many another ruffian long known and feared on the Spanish Main. In the midst of them, the blackest and largest jewel in the dock setting, reclined James Hook, or as he wrote himself, Joss Hook, of whom it is said he was the only man that the sea cook feared. He lay at ease in a rough chariot drawn and propelled by his men, and instead of a right hand, he had an iron hook with which ever and anon he encouraged them to increase their pace. As dogs this terrible man treated and addressed them, and as dogs they obeyed him. In person he was cadaverous and black-avised, and his hair was dressed in long curls, which at a little distance looked like black candles, and gave a singularly threatening expression to his handsome countenance. His eyes were of the blue of forget-me-not, and of a profound melancholy, save when he was plunging his hook into you, at which time 2 red spots appeared in them and lit them up horribly. In manner, something of a grand seigneur still clung to him, so that he even ripped you up with an air, and I have been told that he was a regateur of repute. He was never more sinister than when he was most polite, which is probably the truest test of breeding, and the elegance of his diction, even when he was swearing, no less than the distinction of his demeanour, showed him one of a different caste from his crew, a man of indomitable courage. It was said of him that the only thing he shied at was the sight of his own blood, which was thick and of an unusual colour. In dress he somewhat aped the attire associated with the name of Charles II, having heard it said in some earlier period of his career that he bore a strange resemblance to the ill-fated Stuarts, and in his mouth he has a holder of his own contrivance, which enabled him to smoke 2 cigars at once, but undoubtedly the grimmest part of him was his iron claw. Let us now kill a pirate. To show Hook's method, Skylights will do. As they pass, Skylight lurches clumsily against him, ruffling his lace collar. The hook shoots forth, there is a tearing sound and one screech. Then the body is kicked aside, and the pirates pass on. He has not even taken the cigars from his mouth. Such is the terrible man against whom Peter Pan is pitted. Which will win?